So, today we're going to talk about business. And some of this might be controversial, some of it might be hard to hear, some of you might not like it. And we're going to be talking about this intersection of business and our local governments. So, spoiler alert, don't be shocked when that comes up. I want to challenge each of you to be thinking about what is the way that you can enter this talk with empathy. Try to put yourself in other shoes. And I really try to do that every day at the Chamber of Commerce with the work that I do, and I'm hoping that you can join me in that. So, let's take a look back then. The year is 2018. I've been in the role of Executive Director of the Chamber for about 5 years at that time. My wife and I like to be jumping photos in front of this display. Shortly after I left, I worked for a marketing agency. If you go way back, my history was I came to Lander to work at Knowles, did that for 9 years, then ran the Climbers Festival for a period of time. I see Climbers Festival directors here. Then I worked at the Chamber for 5 years, then left the Chamber to work at a marketing agency with industrial businesses all around Wyoming. And in doing that, I got a lot of insight into what businesses go through day to day. Then I ran a small business here for 2 years, making sawdust professional as woodworker. But I'm hoping to share what we've learned since I've been back in the job since about March. And I also would like to share things that our members are telling us. So where's the Chamber of Commerce been? This is us from the archives dating back to 1933. The Chamber this is a Wyoming State Tribune article. And in the red box here it says, Lander Chamber of Commerce votes in favor of a sales tax against the income tax. So the Lander Chamber has been doing this work for many, many years. You might have saw in our July newsletter, we're celebrating our 95th anniversary. These are some of our top-level investors. And with that, we recognize the board chairs that have been involved in this organization. If you look through this list, going back to 1936, there's a lot of who's who in Lander. So we stand on the shoulders of giants to do work, important work. And many people don't even know what chambers of commerce are. This is how it starts. So we're going to give like a economy 101 here. We've got 3 sectors: private sector, nonprofit sector, government sector. So how did chambers start? They started with businesses like you that said, I have a problem and I can't solve it on my own. And so they put down their camaraderie or their competitive nature, and they became camaraderie and said, let's get together and solve a problem together. This slide is super simplified, but if we look at how money is generated in our economy, the private sector offers goods and services, people engage in voluntary transactions, and that generates a tax base for government. It generates a donor base for the nonprofit, philanthropic, and charity sectors. I was at the Wyoming Business Alliance Governor's Business Forum in November, and Josh Durrell, who's the head of the Business Council, he got up and he was doing a talk, and he said, I work with businesses every day, and they tell me, Josh, we eat what we kill. He said, well, we're government, we also eat what we kill. And there's some truth in that.
That's a lot of truth.
Which is that the private sector funds these other aspects of what's required for our community to operate. So lots of different organizations that operate and support these different sectors. This is, in the nonprofit world here, we've got the Lander Community Foundation. The government sector, we've got the Fremont County Association of Governments. At the state level, we've got the County Commissioners Association, the Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and we've got, at the state level, the Wyoming Community Foundation, the Wyoming Network of Nonprofits. All this is to say that each of these associations are doing things to represent their members, no different than we are. We're trying to represent commerce. Commerce is all about voluntary exchange. through markets of goods and services to solve problems. We believe in that. So since I've been back, I've been listening to members, talking to members, hearing what are you dealing with? And this is a little bit of what you've been hearing. This is a mirror. We're just holding it up as a data point. This doesn't mean that everything on here is empirically true, but it's the things that we're hearing the most. It's also not a report card. It's a data point. What our board of directors did is we used this information and we started a strategic planning process back in April. And through that, on each of your tables, you have what came out of that. At the back of your program is our strategic plan. I'm going to go through a couple of them today. So the first one I want to talk about is advocacy. And we have this one of education and dialogue, and it's about informing candidates on business issues and informing members on candidate positions. And we said, well, great, let's do a mayoral town hall. And in fact, I think all of our mayoral candidates are here that participated. Please join me in giving them a round of applause for their participation. In the lead up to that, we said, well, we need to figure out what are the questions to ask. So we sent out a survey. And it was great. We had 80 people complete the survey. We had 150 questions. We whittled it down to a handful. We asked them. But there are some other things that were in the survey that were interesting that I want to share with you. Also, if you want to go watch the full version of it, it's on YouTube. This is one of the questions that we had. Compared to last year at this time, your business is significantly up, significantly down, about the same, slightly down, slightly up. The big takeaway here is more than any other category, people were saying they were doing well. But on the other side of the coin, they said, we are squeezing harder than we've ever squeezed. So while revenue might be up, our bottom line, our net, is down. And now, there might be many reasons for that. I still think we're in the wake of inflation trickling through our system, the post-COVID era, all that money injected into our economies. But this is both a bright spot and it's concerning. There was another question we asked. How would you rate Lander's business environment climate, e.g. regulatory, permitting, fees, and tax environment? 37% said very or somewhat business friendly, 27% said neutral, 34% said very or somewhat challenging. Now we can look at this and say, well, most people think that it's better than average. I think there's another part from the Chamber of Commerce perspective. We look at this and we say, there's 34% of our members that completed the survey that said this is an issue. And we believe it's an issue that we need to talk about. And so the question becomes, well, what has changed that might have led to this? Because these were not things that I was hearing about in my first go around at the Chamber. I didn't hear about business, climate, environment, regulatory issues. So the question becomes, what's changed? And in talking with both members, business members like you, and also with City of Lander people, I've kind of put together the following list. A mandate for enforcement. The city has said multiple times that they've been asked to enforce the laws that are on the books more than they previously were. In the building realm, permitting, inspection, lots has changed in the building department. And with that, as that change happens, of course it's going to go slower than it went before, because there's greater adherence to the code and rules and regulations. Likewise, with public safety, the city's making a valiant effort towards increasing public safety through regulation. NIMBYism, which I think is all of our shared cultural enemies. NIMBY stands for not in my backyard. It's the trend of an individual in town to say, I have a say in what happens and I don't want it happening next to me. The ironic part is not in my backyard should actually mean in your property, but oftentimes it means in your neighbor's property. And that's not good. And oftentimes it stifles development and forward progress. And then all of these things in aggregate have created a bit of a power dynamic. I want to explore that. We're looking at values on the screen here as much as mechanisms. And I want to go through each of these and just dig into it a little bit deeper. This is not about Lander, Chamber, and the city of Lander. You could take any business association in any town across Wyoming or the United States, it'd be all the same. You could take any government across all of Wyoming or the United States, it'd be the same. Businesses operate with market-based solutions. And market-based solutions are trying to solve problems through the voluntary exchange of goods and services. Governments have regulated solutions. They're very different. Businesses operate, they're aligned towards profits. Governments are towards public safety. And anytime you create a new fee or regulation or something that is going to slow down the process, that is going to impact a business if it falls on them, and they're going to pass that through to their customers. And thus it's a slightly inflationary cycle. Businesses are oriented, they fund operations through sales, governments fund it through taxes. One is voluntary, one is compulsory. Businesses operate best when they're given autonomy. Governments are not only tasked by the public with oversight, but they're also required to by law and by statute. What's interesting is if you take a small market like Lander and you start to overlay regulations, delays, and added costs, you can really quickly disrupt the autonomy of a market. And we may be hearing some of that happen. We're going to explore that a little bit more. This is something I hear a lot about, a perception of fear and power imbalance. Now, either you agree with this and you say, yeah, I've seen it firsthand, or you disagree with it. Either way, it's still an issue. It's still an issue, even if it doesn't exist, and we need to address it by breaking down the perceptions and restoring trust and improving the relationship between businesses and government. So how do we do it? Well, here's a classic example of pulling a rubber band from both ends. Two opposing forces tugging at something. What we're trying to do, all of us, collectively, I'm not just talking about the chamber, all of us, is to create alignment, to pull a new force on that system and combine our forces and point in the same direction. We believe at the chamber that we will do this through productive dialogue and civic participation. And we believe that all of you are the people that need to do this. My conversations with the city, council, and staff, they want this too. This is not something that there's disagreement that this isn't the way that we should go. You might be saying, but Brian, why you up there talking about this? Well, I can say firsthand that I have experience with this. My wife and I had a small venture startup storytelling called Granola and Gasoline, where we explored the very intersection and conflict between two user groups that fundamentally and stereotypically were at odds with each other. Motorized recreation and non-motorized recreation. And you know some people in these different categories. Well, we were Knowles people for 10, 15 years, non-motorized recreation. Then we ventured into the realm of motorized recreation. We started riding snowmobiles and dirt bikes and side-by-sides. And what we thought and what we heard was that these two groups had vitriol towards each other. But then when we started engaging with them, separately at first, we learned that there was actually more in common, and they had curiosity about the other side more than they did vitriol. So we had lots of parties, and brought them together, served them a little bit of alcohol. And by the end of many, many different occasions, we found that there was more common ground than there was differences. Other model I want to talk about is Braver Angels, which seeks to find people with opposing political idealizations and then connect them for a facilitated conversation. It's not to debate, you're not trying to change the other person's mind, but you're trying to understand their perspective. I've participated in a number of these. I don't think the chamber is going to stand up a Braver Angels chapter, but sometimes I do drive by Protest Park, and I want to grab two people from two different sides and say, let's go grab coffee and find something that both of you agree on. And I think that's the solution. That's the solution of all of these problems. Because at the end of the day, we are aligned, the business community and city government, more than we're not aligned. We both want more housing, vibrant, diverse economy, yes-speism, not NIMBYism. want smooth processes for our businesses to engage in if they have to require to go through permitting processes. We want a high quality of life, one that's affordable, sustainable, repeatable. And we want business participation in public process. The city wants that, business community wants that, everybody wants that. We have to start there. I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about housing. So one of our other initiatives that we wrote down in the strategic plan: expand supply, reduce barriers, restore market function. This is, of course, easy. It's a joke. This is very hard. It's a national wicked problem. If the solution existed, it would have been done tomorrow, yesterday. And I want to share a couple of examples of how I think we should start a little bit of a reframe on housing. This first story was when I worked at the marketing agency, and one of our biggest clients was in the forest products sector, different sawmills. So we started working with Nyman family in Black Hills, then we worked with some sawmills in Oregon, working with the American Forest Resource Council, which is a big advocacy and legal council on behalf of sawmills. And what everybody kept telling us about was look at what happened in Arizona. And what happened in Arizona might happen in these other forests. So we studied it deeply. In Arizona in the 90s, legal action brought the timber cut to zero. And so the industry said, well, we don't have surety. We need surety in order for us to operate these $100 to $200 million mills. So they said, we're moving out, we're closing down. So they did. Then what followed was 15 years of bugs, wildfire, disease, because the forest wasn't being actively managed there. They didn't have anywhere to take logs if they were taking them down. And the Forest Service said, uh-oh, we better do something. So they said, industry, come back. We want you to come back. We'll offer you some incentives. We'll offer you whatever you need, whatever you need. The industry said, all we need is surety. We need to know that we have 30 to 50 years of guarantees so that we can operate here, be able to do it. They said, we can't do that. So the industry said, sorry, no thanks. It got to the point that the U.S. Forest Service was saying, maybe we should operate sawmills. That's crazy. It's the very problem that some of the regulation actually created. And I think the lesson here that's so important is it is very easy to push an industry out. It is very hard to bring them back. And right now what we're hearing from developers, investors, builders in town is that they're leaving. They're not wanting to do projects in Lander. And we think this is a big, big problem. This is not one or two. This is 10 to 15. They're saying we'll do projects in Riverton, Shoshone, Du Bois, Cheyenne, Jackson, Salida, Colorado. Places that you would seemingly think would be a lot harder to do a project. I don't want us to fall into this trap. In 5 years' time, we're saying, how do we bring the developers back? How do we woo people that have cultural alignment that want to do projects here? Another one is from the book The Dad Coach. This book profiles the change in how children play. Before it used to be home by dark, go out, play in the dirt, come back. Kids would go out, they'd do their pickup game of baseball. Who knows, maybe they're playing with a stick and a rock, might even be a ball. And how that has shifted over 40, 80 years to everything is organized sports. To the point where your kid's t-ball game is refereed by 4 different umpires. They're calling balls and strikes. And the kids are more animated. Sorry, the parents are more animated than the kids. That's not the way play should be. And if we put these restraints, just like our economy, if we put these restraints on how things should happen, it doesn't happen organically. A vibrant ecosystem of entrepreneurialism requires that you're able to fail, that you're able to learn from your failures. And if you start overlaying a bunch of rules, regulations, it's like, no, I don't even want to. And there's lessons to learn there. The final thing I'll say is we had a meeting the other week, and this was with Regine and Lance and some of our board members. And we were talking about this idea of, what is the solution? We don't know yet at the Lander Chamber what the solution is. We know we're starting to understand the problems a little better, and we're starting to see what are the pathways that we can bring you, the business people, into the conversation and have the experiences you're having get communicated in an effective way. And Lance shared with me, he said, yeah, we can go through the code, we can redline it, because the CMBC code recently was adopted a few years ago. And we're not sure about that. Because I don't know if it's a problem with the code. Everywhere else has the code, but everywhere else doesn't have developers and investors moving out. How do we change the culture, I think, is what our task is. How do we make it so that Hunter is somebody that everybody wants to go to and say, hey, I need help figuring out what's the next step of my project, and he's able to say, yeah, we'll help you get to the finish line. Come along, let's do it together. How do we change the experience when you walk into City Hall as something that's welcoming and warm handshake, rather than feeling like you have to go through vast security measures to gain access? How do we get to the place where everyone in this room, feels like we're all rowing in the same direction? That is a cultural shift, and it's not just a city shift, it's not just a chamber shift, it's an all of us shift that we have to do. So I'm reluctant to say that there's just an easy solution with, if we strike through the line of the code, suddenly our housing problems are solved. They're not. This is from Scott Bollier. He's the Dean of Business at the University of Wyoming. He's a good friend of ours. He recently wrote an article called No Free Lunch, where he talked about how we are getting in the way of our own things that we desire with regard to housing. He said, we say we want affordable cities, then pile on zoning restrictions, permitting requirements, review processes, and neighborhood veto points on the people trying to produce more housing. We believe that the answer will involve deregulation as much as it will involve regulation. We believe that the private sector, and we continuously ask this question, what is the role of the private sector in solving the housing issue that we face in Lander? We believe the people that are wanting to play a role in this, that are sitting on the sidelines right now saying we're waiting for things to change, we believe that they'll return if things do change. We believe that if we align our rules, regulations, and policy, our culture, around how do we get out of our own way, and let the private sector does what it does best, which is solve problems, it will do just that. So, this is not the solution today. This is a primer, this is a frame about how we want to continue to have this conversation. This is asking you, we will need your help in the days, months, weeks ahead of how we have engagement, of how we show up and vocalize what we're experiencing so that there's a continuity between the business sector and our local government. So, with that, thank you for being here today. Thank you for sharing the stories that you have shared, and thanks for being willing to be part of this.